You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Welcome back, everyone, to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today is May 3rd, 2022. For today's episode, I was going to start my draft grade series. I'll be planning to do draft grades for all 32 teams. Hopefully, I'll be able to get through them all. I managed to get through about 20 draft previews in the time that I had. A few things came up, cut it down to a smaller number than I was hoping, but we got close enough. So draft grades, those will start tomorrow. I'll start cranking through those. And then for today, like I said, I was going to start today, but NFL.com decided to drop one of their overly eager power rankings that they like to drop all the time after any sort of significant thing happens in the offseason. I thought it would be fun to sit back and just kind of react to what they seem to believe is the power rankings for all 32 teams in the NFL. So this one is, I believe, written by Dan Hanzus. I think it's Hanzus. So let's sit back, see what they think. Obviously, if you're looking at the screen right now, it is starting with the Houston Texans sitting at number 32. Now, I will say this. This is an easy number 32 pick to make, but I think that there is a case that it could be Jacksonville, but I'm not going to argue it too much. The reason being is that I like the situation that they had going there with the quarterback in Davis Mills. I was pretty impressed with what he did in year one. I've talked about him multiple times in various occasions, praising him and how I thought that the Steelers should have went after him in last year's draft, but they didn't, and they ended up letting the Texans get him. So I like Davis Mills. I also like Lovie Smith, and I like what they're starting to sort of build over there in Houston. Hopefully things start trending in the right direction for them. As mentioned here in this little article, you'll see that, they talk about getting Derek Stingley, Kenyon Green, Jalen Petrie, John Mechie. They had some really good picks in this year's draft, especially in that first round. Like, they came away with some really good players, first and second round, excuse me. So I like what they're doing there. I'm not going to argue it too much, but I think that there is a case that Jacksonville could be there, but 32, I'm fine with the Texans being there. I'd possibly put them there myself. Next up, we got at number 31, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, this one, not really going to argue too much. It's interchangeable depending on who you talk to with the Texans and the Jaguars here sitting up at the bottom. They were able to get Trayvon Walker instead of Aiden Hutchinson, which was a surprise to a lot of people. But it seems like the brass over there in Jacksonville was pretty set in stone on Trayvon Walker for a little bit of time here, which is interesting because that wasn't something that really came out too much. I know a few people did actually mock Trayvon Walker there. I don't know how much they actually knew, but ultimately they did end up going with him. So a little bit of a surprise for the draft. The Detroit Lions appeared to be similar to last year. They were beyond belief that they were able to get Penei Sewell. And then I think, again, when Aiden Hutchinson dropped to them at number 2, they were probably like, how the hell did this just happen 2 years in a row that we got the guy that we wanted? So awesome for Jaguars to get their guy. I'm really excited about what Doug Peterson brings to the table. He's obviously a much better coach in what Urban Meyer was for them last year in that absolute train wreck that they had going on for the season. So excited to see what Peterson and company brings to the table. I like the addition of Trayvon Walker to add to the defense there. They've made some moves during this offseason as well. Obviously, they had that massive contract go to Christian Kirk that everyone was kind of scratching their heads at, but they made some moves to bring in a lot of really good players to fortify this roster a little bit because it was pretty barren everywhere you looked. Like what they're doing, excited to see what the Jaguars could put together. And I'm a Colts fan. Next up, we are looking at the Chicago Bears. Their previous rank was 25 apparently, and they dropped down 5 spots to number 30. Well, Allen Robinson is gone, which is actually noted in this little thing here as well for the article, and also the offensive line was abysmal last year. They did go 4 offensive linemen in this year's draft to help try to fix up that issue, and I definitely appreciate them doing that for Justin Fields' sake, but they do need to find some skilled players. The cupboard is pretty bare over there in Chicago. I know that there are some players, but you need to find yourself a premier wideout in some way or another. I don't know how they would manage it, but Chicago needs to definitely look in some direction to see if they can find even like a solid number 2 wide receiver. I know you guys got Darnell Mooney, but when I think of the wide receivers off the top of my head, that's probably the one that pops up out of my head, and that's about it. So Chicago, I could see why they're sitting here. I am excited to see what Matt Eberflus does over there. As a Colts fan, I thought he was great for our defense, and I'm excited to see how he fares now as a head coach in Chicago. But the Bears at number 30, definitely not something I think I would argue with. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, and this one honestly makes a lot of sense to me too, considering what they went record-wise last year. Even though they did do better with head coach Arthur Smith there, they lost Calvin Ridley to a one-year suspension. Matt Ryan is now gone. Julio Jones obviously left last year as well. I mean, the Falcons are completely starting over on offense, and it just feels like a complete kind of reboot there. Marcus Mariota is the quarterback. I understand that he has some experience with the coaching staff, but I don't really know if that is per se like the answer for them at quarterback. If they're going to run with it for this year, so be it. Excellent for them, but there's a lot of question marks over there offensively. The defense, that's another thing. I do like the Drake London draft selection. I will say that. That was pretty exciting, and obviously you have Desmond Ritter there as well. I don't know if Marcus Mariota ends up being quarterback one. I'm assuming Desmond. I thought Desmond Ritter, for all the criticisms and praises that all these quarterbacks are getting in this draft class, I thought Desmond Ritter was one of the more sure things in the draft. Like, he's a proven winner. He's played in some pretty high-stakes situations in college that, not a ton of quarterbacks coming out of college get to play in. Third winningest quarterback in FBS history. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about what Desmond Ritter brings to the table. I'm excited to see if he ends up snagging that QB1 job from Mariota right out of the gate. I think running with him would be a pretty solid idea, and especially because you got Drake London and Kyle Pitts there now. The running back situation is probably the biggest question mark in terms of skill at this point, and I don't know if Calvin Ridley is going to be able to get his appeal through and lower his suspension at all, but whenever Calvin Ridley comes back, should he come back, this will be a pretty decent offense on paper, I would have to say. But 29 for the Falcons, considering the amount of turnover, that one's fine with me. Next up, we're looking at the New York Football Giants, sitting at number 28. They go up a couple of spots. Honestly, you could argue that these guys deserve to be a little bit higher. Kayvon Thibodeau and then also Evan Neal being their first-round additions. Love it. Fix the D-line a bit. Fix the O-line a little bit. I like it. Now, I'm fighting a yawn right now. If I'm sounding odd at random moments here, I'm trying to hold it back, but I think I might have to let it go here in a second. But I really like what the Giants did in the first round. They did decline the fifth-year option this offseason of quarterback Daniel Jones. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening here. They traded away Sterling Shepard, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was something that happened, or they were at least shopping Sterling Shepard. I might have made that up, but I feel like that's something that was going on. There's a ton of wide receiver talent on this team. I know Kadarius Toney was potentially on the shopping block as well. I don't necessarily know how they feel, obviously, about their wide receiver room, but interesting that someone like Kadarius Toney, who was their first-round selection last year, ended up being available. I know he was dealing with injuries and whatnot, but he did have one solid, really good game where he went over 100 yards, and the talent that they drafted him for in the first round flashed. We'll have to see how that goes, but overall, this is a team now that's starting to trend in the right direction. Hopefully the offensive line can put something together. I really hope Evan Neal can be a really good anchor for this team because offensive line play has been abysmal over there in New York. Kayvon Thibodeau, really excited about that. The fact that Michael Strahan reached out to him and he wants to also mentor him as well, I think that's awesome stuff. Should be exciting to see what the Giants end up doing this year. I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to figure it out in year 4, We'll have to see, but this is the last chance for Daniel Jones, and it feels like the brass is ready to move on, especially after declining that fifth-year option. Next up on the list, we are looking at number 27, and this time we have the Detroit Lions. Lions starting to trend in the right direction, I would say. I feel like under Dan Campbell, things feel positive, and maybe it's just because of the type of person that Dan Campbell is, and I actually really enjoy him as a head coach, and for all the trash talk that came out about the Dan Campbell hiring, really excited about this one here. I love what Dan Campbell's about. It appears that players love what Dan Campbell is about as well. Getting Aiden Hutchinson in this draft was awesome, and then trading up for Jamison Williams too. Shout out to them. Big moves right there. At number 27, I think that's a fair spot to put them. They hovered somewhere around the bottom 3 or 4 for me for the majority of last year's power rankings, even though that there was a point where I wanted to creep them up the board because they were being competitive with some really good NFL teams. But ultimately at 27, based off the draft that they had there and some of their selections, I like this one. Jared Goff is still the quarterback. He's experienced. He's a veteran. Obviously, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the world, but considering Jamison Williams is coming to town now. You're adding a really big piece to the pass rush on defense. And, the Lions managed to move a little bit in the free agency market as well. I like this. Excited to see what they do. 27, I think that's a fair ranking for the Lions. Coming in at number 26 now, the Commanders. They were able to move up and get Jahan Dotson, someone I personally really, really liked. They also went after quarterback Carson Wentz. This one feels about right. Going through the draft, I'm not really big on too much of what they did. I haven't really looked at the draft too much, but just based off of like recollection and hearing some of the picks, there was nothing that really jumped off the page for me. They did take quarterback Sam Howell, which I was actually hoping Sam Howell would come to Indianapolis. I was hoping we would bring him in. I liked him as a prospect, but not like a day one guy. But ultimately, I'm not a big believer in Carson Wentz, as I just mentioned. I'm a Colts fan, so I think you kind of know how I feel about him. Some people think that he did solid last year. No hate to Carson Wentz. I just don't think it was the right fit and was not for me. So ultimately, I'm happy with him being gone and Washington having him. Hopefully, they can get more out of him than we did. But I don't know how I feel about this one. There's an argument that you could maybe have the Commanders a little bit lower than this one and slide up a couple of the teams below them. But at 26, not too much to argue about. Coming in at number 25, we are looking at the Carolina Panthers. Did a good job upgrading the offensive line in this year's draft. And I really, getting Matt Corral is a exciting piece as well because, you have a somewhat of a project type of quarterback that can lead you into the future. I don't necessarily know if he is going to be their guy. You do have Sam Darnold locked in on that fifth-year option when they did that really bold move last year to lock him up for a fifth year because they thought that Sam Darnold was going to be the guy for them. I don't really know if I like this. There's a possibility that some people are saying they might trade for like Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo when Garoppolo's healthy. I don't know about any of that because you have $18 million, I believe, on the books for the fifth-year option of Sam Darnold. But I will say this. The Panthers at 25, maybe a little too low for my taste. For all the questions on the offensive side of the football, they have a championship-level defense, or at least they did last year. And then now Stephon Gilmore is gone. I know they traded like a sixth-round pick for him in hopes that would really spark a fire on the defense. And he played pretty well the first few games and kind of dropped off a bit for them. But I like the defense. I really like the defense over there in Carolina. This is a team that I could argue somewhere around like the like higher up 20s, like 23, 22, 21, just because of how good their defense is. And I am a very big proponent, or not big proponent, but a big guy that, I believe in the whole adage of defense wins championships per se. So, the 25, sure, because of the offense, but I would argue they probably deserve to be a few spots higher. The Jets, sitting at number 24. This is a team that I would put probably below the Panthers. While they do have a quarterback, their defense is not what the Carolina Panthers is, that's for sure. And while they did bring in a haul, I'm going to credit that. Part of the reason why I don't like doing power rankings myself at this stage right now is because you're just betting off of a draft that people went through. And, for everyone thinks they had an awesome draft class. Maybe there's some teams more than others, but there's a lot of hype right now around what the Jets just did in this draft, and I have such a hard time buying into draft classes too much until I've seen them play on the field. Again, this is why I don't do my own power rankings right now, because a lot of you could be high on so many draft teams draft classes, and ultimately this whole first round for the Jets that looks awesome on paper could completely bust out and be terrible. That's a strong possibility. So you're putting the Jets at 24 over a team that had a proven defense in Carolina who, arguably maybe better or worse, but the defense, I would say, in Carolina is better than what the Jets field. And Zack Wilson, don't get me wrong, he started to improve the back end of the season. I don't think he wowed people as much as some were hoping in New York his first year. I like Robert Salah. I like what they're doing over there in New York. Do I think they're better than the Panthers, though? I don't know. Coming in at number 23, the Seattle Seahawks. And this is a team I could put lower than 23. I understand you have Pete Carroll there, but you have Drew Lock at quarterback. There was so much drama with, the Bobby Wagner release, and, Drew Lock and Geno Smith are your QB1s at this point right now. Baker Mayfield might end up being a possible landing location. I feel like he gets rumored to be there a lot, and that's definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on and see if it happens. But right now, they even have them moving up a spot from 24 to 23. I don't even understand how you could get to that point. I understand, draft class and whatnot. Maybe that's what you're basing it off of, but I would still rank the Seattle Seahawks somewhere at like 25 or lower. I don't anything higher than that. You're just being generous at this point. Like, you got rid of Bobby Wagner, who was he had 30 some odd tackles this past season. Like, he was still playing. He might not be Bobby Wagner when he was 26, 27, but he's still Bobby Wagner playing really, really well. The Rams recognized that and dished him out a huge contract to bring him in. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I like these guys at 23. I think they deserve to be a little bit lower. I think they finished off the season around 26 for me this past year, and I don't know if what Seattle has done this offseason is enough to warrant them being up higher than they ended the season. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. But up next, we are looking at the Minnesota Vikings. They dropped down a couple of spots from 22 to 20. I will say this. They did get they did a good job addressing needs, but not with the players I expected them to. I think a lot of people expected them to get Trent McDuffie, and Kyle Hamilton was on the board. You took a safety later on when Kyle Hamilton was sitting right there at number 14 when the Ravens picked him. So, you had the number 12 pick. You could have took Kyle Hamilton, and instead you ended up settling for a safety later on. I understand Harrison Smith's still there, and you're picking that guy to kind of present for the future, but I don't know. I just think that it makes you go Lewis Sign instead of Kyle Hamilton, and Kyle Hamilton was a top 5 pick that a lot of people had circled. That's just surprising to me. And the only reason I don't think he went is because people were prioritizing offensive line and pass rusher, which is fair. You're not going to take one of those over a safety, or you are going to take one of those over a safety. You're not going to take a safety over them. And then you ultimately don't take Kyle Hamilton, you take Lewis Sign, who I like. I like Lewis Sign, don't get me wrong. I talked about him a lot for the Bengals, but I don't know. Interesting stuff there. Them slipping down at 22, fair enough. I could take that. The defense over there really concerns me. Next up, we're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at number 21. This one I'm fine with. I do like the Kenny Pickett signing. They got a quarterback who's the most pro-ready, and this team is still built to win. I think that, and you have a really good head coach in Mike Tomlin. I respect the hell out of Mike Tomlin. I think he is one of the best coaches in the NFL and potentially even all time. The guy's never had a losing record, and that's hard to do in the NFL, especially for as long as he's been around. I think that Kenny Pickett ends up being a really good, solid option for them. And even if he doesn't reach the heights of Ben Roethlisberger level, I think he presents a really serviceable player at quarterback. And overall, I like the team. I like what they've done in the offensive line to try to retool it a little bit here. And, with this draft class that they had coming in, pretty excited to see how some of these guys turn out, but ultimately the offensive line will be key for this team. And you obviously have Mitch Trubisky there. Maybe Kenny Pickett doesn't beat him out for the quarterback 1 spot, but they signed Trubisky with the idea that he might be QB1. So it'll be fun to see those two guys kind of push each other for starting reps. And again, most of my intrigue for this team will be that offensive line and how well it can gel and how quickly it can gel to be effective for this offense to be able to move the football. And I like him at 21. I think 21 is a fair spot. At number 20, the Arizona Cardinals. Talk about a free fall. At one point, or for several weeks, I had them as the number 1 team in the league. I don't know if having them at 20 is fair. I think that the trade for Marquise Brown is huge. And I know DeAndre Hopkins is suspended now, so that kind of hurts the team. But DeAndre Hopkins is huge. Marquise Brown is huge, bringing him in. And you're appeasing your quarterback who was a little upset with you guys about money and whatnot, and hopefully they hammer out a long-term extension for him to kind of sort that all out. But bringing in Kyler Murray's best friend at wide receiver, I don't know if it's going to be Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, but that's the type of connection you're hoping to get, and I think it'll work out well. They brought back James Conner. Offensive line, little bit of a question mark there. It's solid, but not the best. Definitely not the worst. But overall, in terms of their draft class, even if there wasn't a first round selection, you're essentially drafting Marquise Brown in the first round. I like that for them. I don't know if 20 is where I'd put them. I do like their defense a little bit more. I just think that things kind of fizzled out and got sour in Arizona at the end of last year. But at 20, I don't know. I think I would like them somewhere around like 18, maybe 17, something like that. I'd put them a little bit higher. Miami Dolphins sitting at number 19. The proverbial NFL free agency darlings, the guys that won free agency, bringing in Tyreek Hill in a trade, signing Teron Armstead. You obviously still have Tua Tagovailoa. He's your quarterback. I don't know if I can get behind them just yet. We'll have to see how Tua does with his new weapon. I really, really hope that Tyreek Hill, having moved over to Miami, does not end up being a poor career move on his part. I love the play style that Tyreek Hill has. The dude's fast, great route runner, very twitchy, just fast-paced player. Like, he does it all. You don't just get away with being as good as he is by being a fast player. This guy is an outstanding football player. I don't think that the Dolphins really had any massive moves in the draft class. I feel like a lot of their capital went towards getting key players in there during free agency and trading and whatnot. It's interesting to see how this whole situation with Deebo Samuel is unfolding in San Fran, and if he's trying to push to move himself to Miami, because if you flip your roster into Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel at wide receiver, and then you have like Chase Edmonds as your running back, you have Mike Gesicki, that's a pretty crazy offense. Left tackle's now Teron Armstead. You mix in the draft class, some younger talent to kind of push some of the older vets around and whatnot. They got a pretty solid case of, I'm starting to talk myself into liking Miami, and I almost feel like 19 might be too low now. But again, there's a lot of additions to this team, and we need to see those additions mesh. I don't know how I feel about the 19, but I could roll with it. I could roll with 19. I think that's fair. This one, I looked at this earlier, and I don't like this one. At number 18, the New Orleans Saints. They got Chris Olave. Teron Armstead's obviously gone, but they got Trevor Penning to replace him. I don't know if Dan Hanzus was watching the same New Orleans Saints that I was watching the first 7 games of the season when they were 5-2 and they mollywopped the Packers in week 1. And I know it's week 1, teams are kind of figuring themselves out, but they did the shellacking regardless. Tyrann Mathieu just signed over there, and it seems like when he made this, Tyrann Mathieu was expected to sign, so it wasn't a set-in-stone thing, but this came out yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that the deal length came out for Tyrann Mathieu, so I don't know when he put this together, but I have no reason to believe, and I understand that, you don't have Sean Payton anymore, but Dennis Allen's been their defensive coach for how long now, and this team thrives off their defense. Their offense has played kind of second fiddle to the defense the last few years anyways, but honestly, this is a team that is a torn ACL away from being legit Super Bowl contenders. If Jameis Winston doesn't go down, this team is a top 10 team if healthy. And that's my opinion. But I think the Saints are a top 10 team. Not sure how the hell the Saints are sitting at number 18 on this board right now. Makes no sense. I mean, they did go from 22 to 18 in this power rankings here, but based off of what they've done this year, I don't know how they're not in the top 10. And again, you add Chris Olave and Trevor Penning in the first round to essentially fill the holes that you need, and you bring in a veteran safety like Tyrann Mathieu. Like, give me a break. You filled all your holes in the first 2 picks of the draft and in a free agency signing right after the draft was over. Like, that's a top 10 team. I don't know. I think they have strong potential. The Patriots sitting at number 17. They drop a bunch, and I know a lot of people are talking about the selections that they have, Tyquan Thornton, Cole Strange, and some of the selections that they made. Listen, I've scratched my head at it quite a bit as well. I also see what they're doing with their draft selections. Cole Strange was one of the better guard prospects in the draft. Obviously, he was graded for the 3rd round, and they probably could have just taken him in the 2nd round, and that's a fair assumption. But it feels like Bill Belichick was prioritizing team needs more than like draft value, which is why his draft looks the way it does. I don't know the method to his madness. I really don't. But their draft class, when I go through it and I looked at it a bit, like I said, I'm prepping for draft grades. I haven't really gone through everyone yet. I'm putting a long process into it. I understand the picks. They're still head scratchers though. And with other players on the board, you're probably left wondering why. And I get that. But when you look at team needs, I guess I understand the selections. And Bill values traits and things that translate to football really well. Getting the cornerback Marcus Jones, I forget if his full name is Marcus or not, from Houston, like that guy, excellent special teamer, but also a really good DB over there in Houston as well. I like the draft class to an extent. It's a head scratcher, but they do a good job filling needs. And like people are like, oh, you just let go of J.C. Jackson. J.C. Jackson wasn't a first round selection, guys. I trust what Bill Belichick's doing, especially when drafting defensive players. The Tyquan Thornton one is definitely the most interesting of them all because you had some really good wideouts there still on the board when you took Thornton. We'll have to see how he shakes out. I think that this draft class will be a bit dependent on how he turns out. But at 17, they made the playoffs last year, which you have 7 teams. I guess this is fair. You could say 17 just because of how good the AFC has gotten. The Titans free falling to number 16. This one, I could partially agree with. I think it's a little bit far. I think they're still a fringe playoff team. I could put them at 14 and be okay with it. But you get rid of A.J. Brown. Brian Tannehill has left me questioning him after that game against the Bengals and all the interceptions he threw. You did replace A.J. Brown with Treylon Burks. So that's, I guess like fair enough. You kind of, you figure out the replacement right away for your wide receiver that you just traded away. Julio Jones is gone, and while he didn't do much, still a presence on the offense you had to deal with. There's a lot of head scratching here. I don't know if I trusted Mike Vrabel, and I'm a Colts fan, and I've watched what the Titans do every single year. And since Mike Vrabel has been there, they have been a contender. To put them at number 16 is kind of a slap in the face to the track record of Mike Vrabel at this point, who has been very, very good in his short tenure there. Just won Coach of the Year last year, despite the depleted roster they had, became the number 1 seed. I think this is a bit low. I think at lowest you put them at 14. Like I said, at worst they're a fringe playoff team, but at their best, they could probably still crank up. I wouldn't be shocked if they won the division next year. I still would not be shocked if that happens because Derrick Henry will be back. He'll be healthy. At worst, I see them as like a 5 or 6 seed, maybe 7 seed if things really go south for them. But they just have such a good coaching staff. They always have good offensive line play. Their defense is really good. I just have a hard time buying them at number 16. I think that they're better than that. And again, this is coming from a Colts fan. I have a lot of respect for the Titans and what Mike Vrabel does over there. Next up at number 15. This one is obviously a little bit inflated because of the trade for A.J. Brown. I do like the Jordan Davis selection there, and you bring in Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round. That's a really big steal as well. I think that you brought in a lot of really good talent, and this was, again, a number 7 seed. They got to the playoffs. Props to them, but they got smacked by the Buccaneers, who are a legit playoff team. I do think the additions are good for them. I think at number 15, this is a fair argument. I think that, again, this is a fringe playoff team that you're adding a lot to that you need to see what happens. But I do think that 15 is a somewhat fair ranking, maybe a spot or 2 higher or lower, depending on who you're talking to. But I think 15 is fair because I don't necessarily know if they're going to make it back to the playoffs again this year. But I could see them making it in as a number 7 or 6 seed. You have to deal with Dallas, and I know Dallas didn't necessarily get better after free agency. Their draft class will remain to see how that turns out for them. They did make some selections that they were very confident in. The Jerry Jones thing, we'll get to that when we get to them. But overall at 15, I think this is a fair one. You bring in A.J. Brown, who should be an elite receiving threat for the team, paired up with Devontae Smith. I really like that. And again, the Jordan Davis pick and the Nakobe Dean, some really good picks landed in the draft for them from that Georgia defense. I like them. I like them a lot. At number 14, the Cleveland Browns. I think I like this one too. You bring in Deshaun Watson, obviously. I'm assuming he's going to be suspended for some time. With Deshaun Watson, this is a number 14 team. Without Deshaun Watson, this is not a playoff team. So the question is, assuming there's going to be a suspension, can this team stay afloat? And will Baker Mayfield, if he does not get traded somehow, will he be willing to play quarterback for the Browns to try to raise his stock to go somewhere? I don't think so. I don't think that Baker Mayfield's ever taking another step for the Browns again. His money's fully guaranteed. He doesn't have to play if he doesn't want to. So, with that in mind, Jacoby Brissett, maybe. I like Brissett. Don't get me wrong. Colts fan, like Brissett. But I don't know if I don't know. There's some question marks there. You obviously bring in Amari Cooper. Exciting stuff. They kept David Njoku. Hopefully having Deshaun Watson there once he's playing, he can, bring David Njoku to the level that some people think he should be at considering his athletic ability. But I like the defense, but I was pretty high on the Browns last year, and I was really disappointed in how this team went. There was some injuries they dealt with, especially at the running back spot, which I think this team kind of like their heart and soul is through the run game with that Nick Chubb and I almost said Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt combination that they have over there. Number 14, I think they're at their best, maybe a spot higher, but this is a team that could free fall to like number 20 if things go south and they're not playing well and Deshaun Watson's out for 8 games. I think he's getting probably somewhere around that mark, 8 games or so, maybe a little bit more. I would be shocked if he gets less. So good luck to Cleveland. At number 14, if Deshaun Watson's playing. Without Deshaun Watson, I don't know about that. At number 13, we got the Dallas Cowboys. They went and got Tulsa's Tyler Smith, and I remember Jerry Jones. He was, holding up that sheet of paper. We thought Tyler Smith was better than the other linemen in this draft. We wanted Tyler Smith at number 24. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. I will say that I do trust the Dallas Cowboys with building an O-line. They are very good at that. That's one thing they've been very good at, and part of the early success of the Cowboys with Dak Prescott under center was because of that nasty O-line they built at one point, which is not quite that same group anymore. They're not as good as they used to be, but I do trust in them rebuilding the O-line. It seems like they're trying to do so. I'm still at a loss with the whole Amari Cooper trade for them. I don't think the wide receiver room got better, but we'll have to see what the Cowboys do here. Flipping Amari Cooper for a 6th rounder or a 5th rounder, whichever it was, still has me scratching my head. I don't think that the Cowboys are as good as they were last year at this point. Granted, we will see some key players who have had a pretty strong year last year get another year in the system, another year of development. Hopefully Trayvon Diggs can allow some less yards, but continue the interception tear that he was on. Micah Parsons continues to grow in that defense. They did bring back Leighton Vander Esch, which I do like. I like him when he's healthy, and it's just it's if he's healthy part. He's a really good linebacker. He just can't stay healthy. But Dallas at 13, I still think that they're, at worst, like a bottom playoff team. I think the NFC East is still a very wide open division. And the Cowboys are probably not a wide open division. I guess that's not the right way to say that. I think it's a weak division, and I think the Cowboys still have it for the taking, at least for this next season. Next up, they have the Colts at number 12. So this is my favorite team. I'm going to try to set biases aside here. I think this is okay for me. Would I put them at number 13, number 14? Maybe, but at number 12, I like this. You consider the addition of Stephon Gilmore in terms of what you've done. You also added Yannick Ngakoue. I know some people were upset about Rock Ya-Sin being gone. Penalty machine, he did have his best season this past year. I'll give him credit for that, but I will not miss his pass interference penalties and holding penalties. So that's fine with me. And you're adding a pass rusher. I like that. So Stephon Gilmore, upgrade the secondary. You also got Ronnie McLeod, if he even is just a serviceable leader on the defense alongside with like Darius Leonard and company, awesome, excellent. But I like Julian Blackmon. I do like Khari Willis as well. When they're healthy as a tandem, I think they are one of the better safety tandems. It's just they need to both be healthy. And, you bring in Alec Pierce. I love Jalen Wood. I was not sure if I liked that selection until I looked at his tape, and I am excited for that at tight end. Matt Ryan's obviously there. This team should be better than last year's. It should be. And that's all I have to say. At number 12, I think that's fair. Do I think the Colts are going to win the division? I don't know. At number 11, we have the Baltimore Ravens. I like this one. I think that the Baltimore Ravens were dealt a really tough hand last year. I think they're probably, honestly, you could argue they're a top 10 team. And the fact that they're right outside the top 10, I think, is at worst. You have Lamar Jackson. Marquise Brown being gone definitely hurts. I think they're banking on Rashad Bateman turning into an elite guy, though. You brought in safety Kyle Hamilton, which I think is probably the steal of the draft in the first round, at least. I cannot believe he fell as far as he did to them. Tyler Linderbaum upgrades the O-line a little bit as well. The trade of Marquise Brown will be interesting, and then David Ojabo was another injured guy that they brought in. He'll probably have to sit out for the majority of this year. But I like the draft group. I like what they're doing. It seems like they're trying to get back to the more like tight end heavy offense that they were running that Lamar Jackson had a ton of success with that MVP year that he had. So we'll have to see how that goes. I think that if that's the way that they're trending, I like it. I like the tight end heavy system. If it's run well, I think that Lamar Jackson's play style fits it really well also. So I like this. At number 11, you could argue maybe 10 or 9, but that's fair. I like 11. I do like 11. The Raiders at number 10, listen, you bring in Devontae Adams, fair enough. Is that going to be enough to put this team into like a 13-win category, a 12-win category? I don't know. A lot of this team is going to depend on this Raiders draft class. We saw that they did not pick up a single fifth-year option from their 3 first-rounders from, I believe, 2018 is what it is. Because this is, I think, their 4th year from that 2018 class. So it'll be interesting to see how this team fares going into this year. I really thought Rich Bisaccia was the guy. And I'm going to say this. I remember Josh McDaniel. I was pretty young, but I still remember Josh McDaniel's tenure in Denver and how bad that went. Granted, he had Tim Tebow as a quarterback. I respect Derek Carr. I think he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. At number 10, though, this is a lot. I understand they made the playoffs, but they were like this close to also not making the playoffs if the Chargers defense could hold. I don't know if I like the Raiders at number 10. Maybe a little bit lower. Like, I don't like that the Ravens aren't in the top 10 and that the Raiders are. That kind of bothers me. You get more proven, just more, you get more, there's more proof in the pudding for the Ravens than there are for the Raiders, I would say. I don't know if I like them in the top 10. Like 12, I would like them somewhere around there within that ballpark. I would drop the Raiders maybe a couple of spots. I don't know. I don't know how if I like the Raiders there. Chargers at number 9. They used free agency to obviously bring in some key players. You got J.C. Jackson over there. They traded for Khalil Mack. Love to see it. And then they continue to add to the secondary in the draft. Isaiah Spiller, they haven't mentioned, or not Isaiah Spiller, sorry, that's the running back. JT Woods is the guy. The Zion Johnson pick I really like. The fact that they went O-line again to really help out Justin Herbert is huge. And seeing teams build O-lines around these young stud quarterbacks just warms my heart, considering Andrew Luck is still in retirement right now, and I still hate every second of that. But I like them at number 9. I think this is a top 10 team, especially after the additions in free agency. And like I said, I don't make my own power rankings at this time of year because you're banking off of additions that haven't played a snap for your team yet. But in theory, based off everything, I do like the Chargers at number 9. They should be a top contending team. If they're not a top contending team after the additions they made this year, there is a problem, a severe problem going on over there in LA, and they got to figure it out. But at number 9, I think that's fair. Denver Broncos at number 8. This is a team I would probably pull down a little bit. Don't get me wrong. The trade for Russell Wilson is awesome. And I am a guy who said that, the Denver Broncos, if they have a quarterback, they're a QB away from being a contender. Fair enough. However, who knows realistically, and to just shoot them into the top 10 because you have Russell Wilson now. I know the feeling around there has been said to feel like when Peyton Manning got there. And no disrespect to Russell Wilson, but I don't consider Russell Wilson Peyton Manning. So while it's exciting, I could still see Denver slipping outside the top 10. You got an uphill battle to climb, that's for sure. I believe Denver was the worst team in the division last year. So for them to jump from worst to second, and you're leapfrogging a team that in the Charger, like I don't like them above the Chargers. Not just yet. I need to see some proof. I'm excited for what Denver does, and trust me, championship caliber defense, similar to the Panthers. If the Panthers had a better QB situation and their wide receivers over there didn't drop so many balls, Panthers would be up higher on this list as well. Broncos, though, at number 8, a little bit high for me. 10, maybe 11, something like that. I want to see some proof first, though, but 10 or 11 is as high as I'd go. Chiefs at number 7. This right here, not really sure about that. I could argue they're a little bit higher. I really like their draft class. Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis. They got Sky Moore. I mean, you also brought in Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like, I understand you got rid of Tyreek Hill, but so much talent is in there right now in Kansas City, and I don't know how the hell they're paying them all. I am concerned about Tyrann Mathieu being gone from that defense because he was a leader in that group on the back end. We'll see how it shakes out. At number 7, though, I would argue the Chiefs could be number 5. I would be fine with that, too. 5, maybe 4. And I know that, I'm nitpicking small amount of placements here, but in the amount of power rankings that I've done here since I started this podcast, I have a team that's ranked a few spots too low, and I've gotten an earful from plenty of fans. So I would argue Chiefs are a top 5 team after this draft class and what they've done in free agency. I still think they're top 5. I really like this unit. At number 6, Green Bay Packers. This one I'm fine with. Arguably, I think the Chiefs should be higher than the Packers just because the Packers, while they did get Christian Watson, do I think he is the replacement of Devontae Adams? I don't know. I do like that they went heavy on defense and they selected 2 defensemen in the first round. I love that. And I respect that because clearly the Packers are realizing, okay, we need a really good defense if we want to get another championship out of Rodgers. So I'm excited about it. But I'm worried a little bit about the offense, just a little bit. I know Aaron Rodgers is a 2-time MVP. Trust me, I love Rodgers. I love his play, and I think he is one of the most talented quarterbacks, if not the most talented quarterback to ever throw a football. Talented, for you Brady fans, talented is the word I'm using here. Brady is not the most talented. He might be the GOAT. He's not the most talented quarterback, though. He is he's the best leader, greatest leader, and greatest quarterback, yeah, you can say. Not the most talented, though. I would argue the Chiefs should be a little bit higher here. And I don't know what these top 5 looks like. I'm kind of learning along as we go here. I'm just reacting as I look. But the Packers, I could see them being at like number 7 or number 8. Get the Broncos out of here, and you can move some teams around here. But coming in at number 5, the San Francisco 49ers. Great defense. Drama with Deebo Samuel, who is the heart and soul of that offense. You still have George Kittle, obviously. Trent Williams, that O-line is awesome. They did lose some key player on the offensive line in this past free agency. I don't know about this because is Jimmy G going to be QB1? Is Trey Lance developed enough if Jimmy G's not QB1 to lead this team to the playoffs? San Francisco is a little bit high in my opinion. I respect the hell out of them. I think Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. I don't know if I like them at number 5. You could probably argue they belong, I think the Chiefs at number 5, 49ers at number 6. I would probably put them a little bit lower, but I don't know. This top end here, there's some up in the air things. There's been a lot of turnover for some of these teams, and I think that or potential turnover that is leaving some question marks here. I don't know if San Francisco should be as high as number 5. I don't know who I'd put above them. I think the Chargers could maybe slide. You slide up the Chargers, the Ravens, Chiefs. You slip the Packers and 49ers down a couple of spots. I'd probably be happier. Get the Raiders out of the top 10. The way I look at this, who would really go? I just think the 49ers could be at number 7, number 8. If you put the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Packers above the 49ers, I would be okay with it. Quarterback's an important spot, and while I am worried about the wide receiver group over there in Green Bay, and I know the 49ers beat the Packers, if Trey Lance is QB1, I don't know if they're having that same season. And that's not me doubting Trey Lance. I just don't know if he's ready enough yet. And he's a project. He was picked at number 3, but he was a project for San Francisco. And the fact that Jimmy G's still there and they haven't moved him yet leads me to believe that there might be some concern about his development, at least up to this point, and maybe he's not quite ready yet. At number 4, the Cincinnati Bengals. Who's at number 3? I guess this is fine. You make it to the Super Bowl. You represented the AFC. Who in the A? Oh, I guess I have an idea on who is above them in the AFC here. I guess so Cincinnati Bengals at number 4. I guess that's okay. Daxton Hill, I like the pick for them there. I like what they did in free agency for the offensive line. They also they also did kind of go O-line in the draft a little bit as well. So I am for this group here. At number 4 though, I would like them at number 3. I guess it's fine. I guess that's fine. I don't know. I'm not sold on that one, but I guess number 4 is fine. Number 3 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, I guess that's okay. If there's only one other team ahead of the Bengals here, because I'm trying to think of, there's only one other team in the AFC that's above them. It's going to be the Bills. So at number 3, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yeah, I mean, Rob Gronkowski has not really said he's coming back yet. I assume he's going to come back and play with Tom Brady. Based off the draft class, bringing in Luke Godecki. I like that. They brought in Logan Hall. Lines up next to Vita Vea. He's like the replacement for Ndamukong Suh, as it's mentioned over here. I do like this. I think that the Buccaneers did a good job filling the holes with this draft class. That seems to be what Tampa Bay does. They don't really have to worry about value too much. They're just kind of plugging in the holes after free agency with Tom Brady being there. And so at number 3, you got Brady there. You still have a really good defense. You still have a really good offense. They had brought in Russell Gage as a third wide receiver with the loss of Antonio Brown, obviously. So I like the unit. And number 3, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers aren't contending for a Super Bowl, I'd be pretty surprised. Coming in number 2. Okay. So number 1 is the Bills. Number 2, the Los Angeles Rams. Odell Beckham. I feel like he comes back to LA. It feels like he wants to be there. He loved playing with Matthew Stafford. They had a good connection. And I'll tell you right now, for as close as that Super Bowl was, the Rams were playing with Cooper Kupp and then like a bunch of who's who. Because Van Jefferson wasn't really doing a ton, and I'm pretty sure he got hurt at some point in that Super Bowl game. Because he was not playing to the level he should have been. And I'll tell you this right now. They did a good job just kind of like addressing what it is that they felt was like necessary in the draft with the minimal picks that they had. But I mean, if you bring back Odell, and if Odell doesn't get hurt in the Super Bowl, I think they run away with it. You brought in Bobby Wagner in free agency after losing Von Miller. I think that's a very fair like that's like a wash essentially. Maybe Von Miller's playing a little bit of a higher level still because he's a premier pass rusher and he's a game wrecker. Rams at number 2. I wouldn't be mad. I'm kind of mad about this because the team that's at number 1, if we slide up here, obviously the Buffalo Bills. I think the Rams are the number 1 team in the league still. For as good as this draft was for the Bills, because they did get Khair Elam, they did get James Cook. Offensive line was addressed a bit. They didn't even make it to the Super Bowl, though. And while the Bills were a coin toss away from potentially being in the Super Bowl, or in the AFC Championship game, mind that, excuse me, having them at number 1, I don't know. I like the Rams at number 1. I almost like I like the Bengals at number 2. Honestly, I understand that they were the teams that played in the Super Bowl, and so maybe that's why I'm picking that. But like the Bills and Rams in the number 1 and 2 spot does not do it for me. And trust me, I think the Bills are uber talented. They're probably better than the Chiefs right now. Like I just think it would be Rams, Bengals, then Buccaneers. And then I would need more time to sort through this. I can't do a power ranking off the whim. It takes me a lot of time to put all this together. So I would if I was to do a top 3, Rams, Bengals, Buccaneers, Bills, top 4. There's your top 4. That's how I would do that. Bills number 4. Honestly, and if I'm being upfront, maybe Bills 3, Buccaneers number 4. I think the Bills have a really good team that stacks up well against the Buccaneers, and if those teams were to play 10 times, you could probably have a 50-50 split. Maybe 6-4 one way or the other. But that's NFL.com's power rankings. Interesting stuff to say the least. This is a long-winded video. We've been doing this for 50 minutes. My goodness. Good luck watching this. I appreciate y'all for hanging out watching. Let me know what you guys think of the NFL.com's power rankings. That's it for me. Have a good one.